All right. Any questions on project 2? Project 2. You should have turned in your design document today. How did that go? Good? Bad? Do you like doing the design documents? Really? I hate grading them. So I'm always hoping that you will say no, that you find them not worthwhile. But hopefully they get you thinking about the project in advance. Okay? The project is posted as of right now. The auto grader should be up. Just like last time, there are 2 places you can submit. One is the compile, like the format compile check that will check your program and do its best to see that it's formatted in a way that the auto grader can understand. The other is the submission. The submission one, again, you only have 2 submissions for that, so you should do your best to make sure that you have tested everything thoroughly before you submit. Okay. The way the grading works is that there are 50 different test files in there, some of which I wrote by hand and some of which are randomly generated. So when you submit for your final grade, it will run your program with 50 different test files, compare them against mine, and hopefully everything is right. This assignment should be a little bit easier than assignment 1, so project 1. Any questions? Any questions for project 1? Yes? Uh-huh.
And I gave it a different cutoff eligibility score.
Yep.
There were differences in the averages. So if having a different cutoff eligibility score.
Yes, a different eligibility score should absolutely affect the averages, right? Because what we're doing is we're saying, given this group of people, what's the average? Now, if we exclude some people because their score is too high, the group of people that we're computing the average over changes. There are different people in there. And in fact, if we set the eligibility score too low, what do you think will happen? How big will the group that's left be? Say we set the eligibility score to 1. Is it possible to have a subject who has an eligibility score of 1? How many of y'all think it is? How many of y'all have no idea? How many of y'all think it's not? Okay, it's not. So if we set the eligibility score to 1, what happens? 0 people. So what happens when you divide something by 0? Nothing good. Well, actually, let me just set up a really fast demonstration of this, and because I should have done this before probably. Okay, so let's do this. Let's set, I don't know, do you want to double? And we'll make this D, and it will be 127.8. And we will have an int x, and that will be 0. And we will see out D divided by x. What are we doing here? Dividing by 0. How many of y'all look on Reddit and know all the funny divided by 0 memes, like holes and the world collapsing? Is the world going to be destroyed when we do this? If the world were going to be destroyed when we do this, it would have ended in my lifetime sometime around 1978, the first time I divided by 0 on a computer. So I actually think we're safe, but let's just try and see what happens. Inf. That's interesting. So this is telling us it's infinity, right? The other thing you can get sometimes is if you do 0 divided by 0. And let's see if this compiler gives us a different answer for 0 divided by 0. Because so here's our algorithm, right? Declare a double, give it a big number, declare x and y 0, divide the float by x, so we're dividing a float by 0, and then divide 0 by 0. What's 0 divided by 0? Floating exception, okay? On some machines, you will also get something that says nan, like this, not a number. It depends on the compiler. So you will get errors. Yep?
So the averages that we're calculating are only for the subjects that are included?
Yes, the averages that you're calculating for project 2 are only for the subjects that are included. Now, one thing that your program should do is it should not output any of these things. You should test inside your program and make sure that you are not dividing by 0. Okay? If you are ever dividing by 0, just return 0 result instead. Got it? I have to add that to the project page. I forgot to update that. I meant to do it over the weekend. But this is your official notice. If your program divides by 0 and you get one of these results in floating expression or not NaN, the autograder will fall over and die. So make sure you're outputting zeros. Yeah. Yep. 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 It's not part of the grading. The reason I include this, so here's what she's saying. I logged into CS class like without a password. That's magic, isn't it? So I logged into CS class, and now I can run the file cohort lima subx.txt. Couldn't find this file for opening. Please re-enter file name. I'll show you how to do this today if you want. It's not part of the grading. It's just that it's really annoying to me to like be testing the program and screw up typing the file name and have to start it over again. Okay. So remind me when I start talking about while loops again today. Remind me, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay. Other questions? Any other questions about project 2? Yes, sir.
Is it possible to have an if statement that doesn't do anything if the conditions are true?
Is it possible to have an if statement that doesn't do anything if the conditions are true? Sure. Yeah. However, there's absolutely no reason for you to do that. Right? Like, why would you check something in order to do nothing? If you want to go to the else statement, just put a not in front of it. And now you have flipped the statement, and you're saying if this is not true, do this. So, yep. 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 We could put a not in front of it. We could do x not equal to 0, like that. So the question was, can you have an if statement that does nothing, but then you go to the else? You can, but that's like weird, right? That's like if I were writing a paragraph and I wanted to write about, what happened if this person had not lived. Instead, I would be like, here's what happened since they lived, and it's blank. And that's a really bad analogy, but yeah, just don't do that. So. Okay, one question that a few of you, one thing I should say, we're using AutoGrader for the first time. I don't really know how it works. From the instructor interface, there is a big scary thing that has like red around it. It says danger. And it says one of the things is release grades to students. So I graded all your project 1s. If you go onto AutoGrader, you can see all the comments on the final grade. And I clicked the button that said release grade to students. Did you all get any notification or an email or something? All right, well, if you go on AutoGrader and look at project 1, you will see in your submission, like your most recent submission, that I went through, and there are comments in there and points and stuff like that. One of the things that some of you, if you go in there and look at, will say, and that you didn't get points off for this, it just says, don't make your lines too long, because then they end up being really hard to read. And I said that I would show in class how not to do that. So let me show you. So here is a little program I wrote that has long variable names, because this is one of the things that usually causes the problem. So we have int, the first integer, which is 1, int, the second integer, which is 2. Everybody see where the sequence is going? Int, the third integer is 3, fourth integer is 4, and sum is 0. So what we want to do is we want to sum all these things together. And if you notice, this line is so long that it's actually wrapped around. And if I make my screen a little bit narrower, you can see it like wraps around a lot. Everybody see what I'm talking about? This gets annoying. It particularly gets annoying on the AutoGrader because the AutoGrader doesn't do very well with lines that are more than about 80 characters across. Okay, and 80 characters happens to be kind of like an informal standard in computer science. It is suggested that you keep your line lengths less than 80 characters. It turns out that 80 characters comes from the original punch card machines. Like the original punch cards people used in computing had 80 characters. And so we kind of just used that today. Yes, sir. Okay, well, this is not a line break. Like the line is actually long. It's just that my editor can't display everything. So you can see there's like, maybe you can see there's tiny little ellipses there. So it kind of wraps around. It's just ugly. It's like hard to read your code. Oh yeah, so I'm going to show you how to fix that, right? So here's what you do. Like in C++, the end of the line marker is this semicolon. The compiler does not care about white space. So if I see a line that's getting too long in my code, what I will do is I will pick a place for addition or for operations I choose right before the operator, and I can break the line up and I can stack all these things together. Okay. And this is pretty easy to read, right? Because now we can say, oh look, sum equals the first integer plus the second integer, oh, plus the third integer plus the fourth integer, and so on. Does that make sense? So break your lines up that way, and you can stack things on the operator neatly. Yep. Okay, so I'll show you in 1 sec, okay? So here we go, we have C out, the same thing with output, right? Like this line wraps around, so what I can do is I would probably break it here, like that. And I like to break it so that the variables are actually what are visible at the beginning of the line rather than like the space. So I might have been able to like fit sum in the first line, but you can do this, right? The sum and components were sum, the first, in fact, since I'm stacking things, I would probably just stack it like that anyway. Somehow I got some extra spaces in there. And this makes the output clearer. Instead of having to like figure out what happened when the line wrapped around and where it went, some editors, in fact, when the things go outside the edge of the editor, they don't automatically wrap around. You have to like, you know how you scroll up and down? You have to like scroll right and left to see the whole line. That's really annoying. So try and keep your lines short, okay? Now the question is what if we have a really long string, right? And I know I'm making typos, but I don't care. Okay. So here we have a really long string that we want to put out. I would literally just break the string up into multiple strings like this. In fact, if you look at my code, when I write code, this is typically what I do. And I've done something wrong here. Oh, because I forgot the semicolon. And that will be exactly the same. Now, one thing you got to be careful of is I took away a whole bunch of spaces when I was doing that. So put some spaces in. Yep. Okay, so set precision affects numbers, right? If I had numbers in there too? All right, so there's a floating point number. Does that work for you? We probably want more decimals, don't we? And then if I output this, let's just see what we're doing here. Oops, wrong machine because I logged into that machine. All right, so here's what we wrote, right? The sum and components were, we didn't put any end lines anywhere, so that's pretty horrible. So let me put an end line in here too. Okay, so now if we recompile, you can see the sum and components were, and this is our really long string that was output that we didn't like. We can, if we want it to be all one long string, we can just put an end line at the end of it. It's ugly that way. You might choose to format your output so that you have a couple of end lines in the middle. That's a little bit better, right? So what's your question about? Yep. Uh-huh. Set precision only happens once. Set width has to happen each time. Here's what I do. Whenever I'm working with floating point numbers, I put this line like kind of at the top of my code, right? Do you want to come to ask me about that some other time? So, but we need to use IO manip, and then we can use that. I'm not typing well today. Okay. So, but you just do this once, and once you've done this, I lost it. Did I untype it? Oh, here it is. Once you've done this, every number, every decimal number for the rest of your program will be the way we expect it to be. So, in fact, here I'll show you the difference in case you don't remember. Right here we're printing out the double number. Then we change it to fix and setter precision, which is not right, and then do it again. And if we make set precision larger, we can change that too. It just happens that they work out the same way that time, so it didn't quite work out exactly. So set precision affects everything from there on out. Set width only affects the next thing that is printed, which is kind of annoying sometimes. But. All right, everybody happy with that? Can you break up lines? For last time, your submission did not include formatting as part of the grading. This time, your formatting and programming style will be 10 points of your overall grade for your project. Okay? So when you run the auto grader, you will see that there's a number that comes out. It's style 0 because the auto grader doesn't do the style grading. Some poor human, probably me, will have to do it. And we have to do that by hand. So the best score you can get on the grading submission for the auto grader is 90 because I'm saving 10 points for style points. Okay? Yep. Email me and I'll post some extra. Okay. But you should think about a couple of cases and create your own test files for them. Like think about what weird things can happen and write your own test file for weird things that might happen. Okay? Don't assume, like you can assume that all the numbers are going to be reasonably formatted and the right types and that there'll be 13 per line. I'm not going to do that to you, but what happens if the values are very extreme? What happens if the number of lines is very short? Things like that. Okay. Yep. Yes, the maximum is the highest score that you can accept into the cohort. And I'll have to check and make sure my code complies with that. But I think that's what I did off the top of my head. I would look right now, but then I would flash up all my solution code on the screen, and it would be recorded on YouTube, and then that would be bad. So for me, not for you. All right, everybody happy? Great. Somehow we just talked for 20 minutes. Take a 1-minute break, stand up, stretch. All right, welcome back. I have put a program on the board. Who wants to tell me what this program does? Yes, sir. Okay, it initializes a variable named x to 10 and then outputs x. Everybody good with that? If we run this, what is this going to output? All right, let's see if that's right or not. Great, that outputs 10. All right, we talked last week about the plus plus operator. What does the plus plus operator do? Yep. It increments the variable by 1. So now what does our program do? Yep. Okay, so it'll output, we set x equal to 10. We output x, it goes and looks at x and gets what? 10, so we output 10. And then output x plus plus, what does x plus plus do? Adds 1, so what do you expect to be in the box named x? And this will output, okay, let's see if that's right. Great. Everything's working just like we like. I'm going to show you one more thing though. Just like we have x plus plus, we have plus plus x. It goes in front. What do you think this does? Yes, sir. Okay, so x plus plus, like this, is different than plus plus x. And it's different because what this is doing is it's combining a couple of steps together. Plus plus x means, all right, x plus plus, if I can type that, okay, x plus plus means use x and then increment it. So if we output x again right down here, I'm going to comment this line out for a sec, okay? If we output, take that away actually. If we output x down here, what is this going to output? Everybody with me? So we think it's going to output 10 for this one. We've seen that. This one outputs 10, and what will this one output? Who thinks it'll output 10 still? Who thinks it'll output 11? Who is uncertain? It's fine to be uncertain. So let's try it and see. 10, 10, and then 11. Okay. So x plus plus means use x and then increment it. Okay. So when we get down here, it's 11. So let's do this one now. What does this do? If you put the plus plus first. Yep. Exactly. Plus plus in front means increment x, then use it. So this one, if we had 10, this one outputs 10, but it changes x to 11. This one outputs 11. It doesn't change the variable. This one will increment it one more, so 11 plus 1 is? You sure? You all sound pretty hesitant there. Yes, 11 plus 1 is generally 12. And so this should output 12. And let's see if that works. 10, 11, 12. Okay, everybody with me? Great. Just like we have increment, what else do we probably have? Decrement. And just like we have decrement first, we also have decrement after. And we can put either before or after. So this one outputs 10. This one, even though x is incremented, outputs 10. This one outputs 11. This one increments and then prints, so it outputs 12. What's this one going to do? It's going to what? It will output 12 and then subtract. And this one, minus minus x. You can put a space in there if you want. All right. Everybody happy with this? Let's actually see what happens when we run it. And we should see x count up, 10, 10, 11, 12, and then count down again. Okay, this is common notation. People will use this in strange ways. Now, yes, sir?
Does increment or decrement always mean plus or minus?
Yes. It always means plus or minus 1. Yep. Not using this, but I will show you a way to do it shortly. Other questions? All right, so here in the evil early days of me being a computer science professor, I would do something like this. All right, what does this do? I don't know. I don't even know what it does, but let's try it and see what happens. So at some point in the old days, when I first started teaching this, like, you know, when you were toddling around in diapers, this stuff like that worked. The compiler worked. And then the people who wrote the compilers realized that people were actually writing code using this. And code using constructs like this is just not human understandable, right? I mean, if you look at something like that and you're like, all right, I'm going to use X, and then I'm going to increment it, and then I'm going to, like, what the hell is the order of operations when you have a whole bunch of these things? So they made it so that the compiler doesn't do this anymore. And I just show this to you because it makes me sad that I cannot do evil things to you like I used to. So, yes? I don't know. We could try it. I mean, you probably don't want to know the answer to that, but it might. 1, 2, 3, 2. All right, let's see if that works. Yeah, just it doesn't. So anyway, so lucky for you, I can't do that to you, but also lucky for everyone. Now we don't have to read other people's codes who have done horrible, horrible, insane things with increment and decrement operators. Okay, so all right. However, oops, sorry about this. I can give you problems like this. So this is a sample problem that I would use to test your ability to. Oh wait, I can't do this one yet because I haven't taught you everything there. Okay, sorry. We'll save that for later. All right. Any other questions? So one of the questions was, this thing always goes by ones, right? Always goes by ones. That's kind of annoying. So so is there a way that we can do something better? And if we want different values? And the answer is yes. Here's what we can do. Now, oftentimes we'll have something that looks like this. This is just really horrible. Let me change the variable names. This is still horrible. Okay, let's do this. Oh, sorry. That was got away from me a little bit. Okay. By the way, I'm almost out of candy. Do I need to buy another bag? Do y'all like the candy? How many of you like candy? Ah, I can't afford to do donuts every day. So, unless you all take up a collection. If you bring donuts, I will throw donuts. How's that? So. Okay, I'll try and get some more candy this week. Okay, so very often we have constructs like this, like sum equals sum plus something, right? One place that we might do this is if we have, I don't know, we might be doing something like this. Except instead of x, we should use something like age factor. I don't know if that seems relevant to you for any reason, right? So if you're reading from a file and you're reading into numbers and you want to loop over and read everything from the file, you need a construct like this, where sum equals sum plus age factor. I'm going to comment that out because that's not what we're doing in this program, but I just want to use this as a motivating example. Everybody see what I'm doing? I know I went like 90 miles an hour right there. Okay. Last time we talked about having a while loop. It read from an input file, which was something that we opened. We used the normal angle brackets, and we were able to put it into a variable. In this case, I used age factor. The reason I did that was because I'm trying to give you a great big hint for your project 2 when you code, right? When you code your project 2, you're going to have an input file that reads these 13 things, all one after the other. ID, age factor, whatever goes on from there, like pregnancy prognos, pregnancy factor, right? So you're going to have like something that goes on and reads, instead of just age factor, you're going to have 13 different things there. You're going to need to keep track of a sum of those 13 things. So in this example, I'm just showing you we can use sum equals sum plus age factor. Now, doing this thing where we say something equals sum equals itself plus something else, like I did up here, sum equals sum plus x, or sum equals sum plus age factor, is really common. It's really common in C++. You will do a lot of this. So, when things are common, what do? Come up with easier ways to do it. Okay? The easier way to do it is like this. You can combine the plus and the equals together. And what this means is these two lines are the same. Sum equals sum plus x is the same as saying sum plus equals x. So you add x to sum and then set sum equal to it. Okay? Both are equivalent. So, if we see out sum at different parts, what will we get? What will we get for this one? Why? Because when the computer runs, the computer is stupid, but it's stupid fast. What does it just do? Where does it start? Int main. It reaches int sum equals 0. What does it do? Yep, creates a box called sum, creates a box called x, puts 0 in there, outputs sum. That's a string literal, so outputs that, and then it goes, oh, sum. That is a variable. I will go look in that box. We know what's in that box because it hasn't changed, and it is 0. Okay, sum equals sum plus x. What is in the box called sum? What is in the box named x? If you add those together, what do you get? And then when you put them back into the box named sum, what is in the box named sum? So when we output that, we get 5. And if we do it one more time, what do we get? 10. Okay, so you can see this plus equals takes the contents of sum, adds it to x, puts it back into sum. And we will G++ that. We'll make sure that works. Sum 0, 5, 10. That's what we expected. Let's try it. Let's try equal plus. What might it do? Here's the answer is I don't know. I suspect it's going to cause a compiler error, but it's possible that there is some operation that I'm unaware of, which is why I like experimenting like this, because I learn things. How many of y'all think compiler error? How many of y'all think something unexpected? How many of you don't know? Compiler error. There you go. So no, it doesn't work. But we can do something else. We could do like sum minus equals x. What's that going to do? Subtract. We could do sum, check this out, mod equals x. What's that going to turn it into? Pretty sure it's going to be 0, or maybe, pretty sure. But any of the things we do, plus, minus, divide, times, mod, all work in front of an equal sign. So they do kind of like the same thing. You do that operation and then store it back in the original variable. Okay. So this is a shortcut. It's actually easier to read. It's a good shortcut in my mind. So let's actually see what happens here. If we step through this, let's make some predictions, right? We knew this sum printed out 5. And then we add 5 to it, and we get what stored in sum? 10. And then we output 10 here. Sum is 10. And we add 5 to sum again, and we get 15. And we output 15. And here, we take away 5. So we should have what? 10. So sum should be 10. Okay. So 10 mod 5 is what? Should be 0, right? So when we output this down here, what should we get? 0, because we changed it to be the remainder. So let's just make sure that works. But in essence, any of the operations you've seen, you can do with plus equals. Is that straightforward? And that's your answer to, like, if instead of wanting to use plus plus, you want to like use a different value each time, you can use plus equals and the value instead of decrement. Now, what you can't do is you can't do something like this. I don't think this will work. Plus equals 5 sum or something like that, right? Like we can't do the same thing we can with increment and decrement operators where we control whether they happen before or after. Like there's no way that I can think of to do that. So, yes, sir. Nope. Increment and decrement are only one either way. But honestly, it's okay. I mean, it's fine. We use that, particularly we use plus plus so often, it's actually a really convenient shorthand. We use it so often, all the time. Other questions on this? Yeah? Sure, let's do this. Int y equals 7. So down here, let's do something else. So we knew sum was 0 last time we saw it, right? What do you want to do? X plus y? X times y? Do you care? Do x plus y. Any predictions on what do you think this is going to do? Yeah. We could, but we don't really need to. This is simple enough. It's just you haven't seen it before. So what happens is it will do the x plus y first and then add it to sum. So since sum was 0 after we did the mod, x plus y will be 12. I expect sum to be 12. Let's see if that's actually correct. Yep, it's 12. So you can put all sorts of crazy things there. Yes, sir. Oh man, you're cruel. Sum plus equals x plus equals y. Hang on, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put that on a line all by itself, so in there. I actually think you can. I just don't think it's a good idea. So let's see what happens when we try it. I never considered that. Oh, you can. So the problem with doing that, right? The problem with doing something like that is who has to read your code? Humans, right? And it's kind of like, that's kind of evil. I like it. It'll output 12, I think. We can try it and see. Oh no, 24. Oh man. Oh, it's because it was 12. Because it was 12 before. It was 12 before. Sorry, I forgot about that step. So, yeah, don't do that. I mean, you can just because you. So when I was in college, I had a friend who was really, really good at telling stories, and she talked really fast. I'm lying, and then she'd go on and be like, "I went to the grocery store, and then we accidentally went into the beer case, and I'm lying, and I actually took like a 6-pack of beer and like walked out the door. I'm lying, and then did you notice I'm lying in there really fast?" And people tended not to notice that, right? So she would be telling you she was lying in the story. This is kind of like the equivalent of doing that, right? It's like slipping in something that's obnoxious and hard to read. So I wouldn't do that. So, some people might, So there's your answer. Now I'm going to put that on every exam. I won't do it for your class because you thought, but like next time I teach this class, they're in trouble. So. Okay, other questions about this? All right, good enough for now. Why don't we take a 1-minute break in place again? So you can stretch, then we'll go back to talking about something else. Okay, welcome back. So today, by the way, I'm like going back and cleaning up and like just filling out a couple of topics that we touched on before, but didn't have quite time to go into as much detail as I would like. So I'm just trying to get back to a few things. So one of the things I'd like to get back to and talk a little bit more about is strings. Do y'all remember what strings are? What is a string? A bunch of characters put together, right? So we had a little program before where we did stuff like entering first names and last names, and we showed that when you typed a string, CN would take your string apart based on spaces that were in between them. Remember that? Unless you did what? GetLine would get everything all at once, okay, instead. So here's our program. It's string3.cc, and we can do, let's just compile this and make sure it runs before we use it. Okay, enter your first and last names. Can't type today. All right, name's Clay Childs. Great. All right, so strings have some other things that you can do with them. All right, some other unusual things. So for example, if a string is a bunch of characters, might it sometimes be useful to figure out what the individual characters inside the string are? How many of you think that might be useful sometimes? How many of you think that will never be useful? How many of you have no opinion on the matter? Sorry, I almost fall off the stage if I don't put that there. So. Nobody. How many of you have no opinion on whether you have no opinion? Okay, good, just checking. All right, so one of the things we can do is we can, for a particular string, we can use this. We can say first, if I can type, first, oh, come on. First name dot at, and we can put parentheses in there, and we can put a number inside this at. First name at will give us the letter at a particular position. Okay? So if my first name, if I'm going to type in Clay for my first name and I put in first in at 1, what letter should that pick out? C. Let's try it and see. So I'll compile it, I'll clear the screen, I'll rerun it. My name is Clay Shields, and whoa, what's that? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. So here, computer scientists are weird people, right? We're weird. Most of the time, when we do positions of things, we don't start counting at 1. Instead, we start counting at 0. So we have not the first place, but the 0th place. The 0th. Yeah, literally 0th. Right? It's not the first, it's the 0th. So if you say the first place, what you actually get is the second letter, because we start counting at 0. So how would I change this program if I wanted to output the first letter? We would change that 1 to a 0. And now when we compiled it and when we ran it, we would get that first. The first letter to us is the 0th one for positions. This is super duper common, not only in C, but in almost every other programming language. And there's a reason for it that I will eventually teach you later in the semester, but for now, please just believe that computer scientists are all insane and prefer starting count at 0. Okay, everybody good with that? Y'all are like, it's like I got a class of professional poker players to teach them to you're like, yeah, not nice. So, yes, sir. You get like a control H or something. Yeah, that happens. Yeah, yeah. Talk to me later because it's very specific to each computer. So rather than going into it, yep. Let's try it and see. So let's do this. Int y equals 3, or int x equals 3, and let's put x in there. Is that what you wanted to do? What do you think will happen? It'll give me the 4th letter, which should be a y. So let's make sure that works. It gives us the y. So yes, you absolutely can have variables in there. All right, everybody good with that? Okay. Let's torture the poor computer and see what happens. What happens if we ask for the 2.5th letter? What do you think is going to happen? All right, who thinks it's going to round up? Who thinks it's going to round down? Who thinks the compiler is going to give us an error? Who thinks that the world will come to an end? Compiler error. Has to be an integer value. Let's try this though. Pardon? Oh man. Well, I have no idea what's going to do now. Let's see what happens. It gave us the A, so it rounded up, I guess. 0, 1, 2. Yeah, sorry, rounded down. So. Yeah, it truncated. Okay. Yeah, so the answer is don't do that. All right. Yeah, there we go. All right, so it turned it into an int. That's not what I would have the compiler do, but I didn't write the compiler. So how about this? How about if we make it a big number? Like bigger than the things that we have. So, right, if I give it 5, clay is C-L-A-Y, 0, 1, 2, 3. 5 is clearly past the end of the string, right? What do you think is going to happen here? The program throws an error. It says, terminating with uncaught exception of type out of range. Out of range. Okay, we went too far, and so the computer crashed. Your program would crash if this happened. Out of range errors are pretty common. We'll learn more about those later. All right, but you know what would be handy? How would we find the very last letter in a string? Yeah? All right, it will say you can actually ask the string, just like we use .at, you can use the variable name and put .length on the end, and that will say, tell me how long that string is. So what I can do here is now I can do something that says, you know, first name was length letters long. So when I run this and I type Clay for the first name, what is this going to output? Three? Are there 3 or 4 letters? We start at 0, but let's see what happens here. First name was 4 letters long, because there were 4 letters in there. Okay? So how would we output the last letter? What? That was weird. Okay, so how would we output, hang on one second. All right, I just wasn't sure if that killed the recording. I wanted to make sure we got it. So, okay, so how would we output the last letter of the name then? Yep. Length minus 1. Why don't we just do length? Let's just do length. Uh-oh. That's not good. Okay. So you're absolutely right. We have to do things this way. So let me draw a little picture of how this works. All right, if we have a string which is Clay, right, it will have 4 letters. The first one, and I put these zeros above it like that, just to help us see what's in what place. The first one in the 0th position is capital C. The one in the first position is capital L. I'm sorry, capital L, not capital L. The second position is A, and the third position is Y. But there are still 4 letters, okay? When we count the length, we count all the letters. But when we look at the position, we start from the 0th. This is often completely confusing and is therefore a really good midterm exam question. All right, everybody see how this works? So if we really want to get the last letter, what we have to do is we have to do full name at length minus 1. And we figure out the length. If the length is 4, the last position will be 3. It will be length minus 1. The first position will be 0. And now, if we run this, the last letter was Y. Okay. So length and position are related. The length is how many letters there are. The positions go from 0 up to the length minus 1. Okay. All right, any questions on that? How many of y'all think that's dumb? How many of you don't think it's dumb? How many are just willing to accept it as gospel without any justification whatsoever? All right, well, whatever works for you. Okay. So, all right. So, length. All right, let me make a clean program here because then we'll have some better space to work in. Okay, so let's go back to our original program here, where we just asked for a first and last name. And let me just compile this and make sure I didn't screw something up. All right, so that's working. All right. Say we have two strings. We have first name and we have last name. And we want to combine them together into one string. How might we do that? Any guesses? Yeah. A plus sign, so we can just add strings together, you think? I don't know. We'll see about that. Full name equals first name plus last name. All right, you think we can just add them together? Yes? The ASCII values? Okay. Remember for characters, when we use the plus sign, what happened? It didn't jam two together. It did something baffling and added their numeric values. Do you think it'll do the same thing for strings? How many of y'all think it'll do something weird? How many of you think it'll behave as you would like it to behave? How many of you have no opinion? I'm obviously missing one of the multiple choice questions. Or how many wish I would just stop asking you these damn questions and making you raise your hand? No one used to like that too? I don't know what to say. All right, so let's see what happens here. Oops, sorry. All right, it did add them together, okay? Now, unlike characters, strings have some magic associated with them. And the magic means that we can use plus to add things together. Now, it didn't quite work the way we wanted, right? Because what happened? What are we missing here in the middle? A space, right? It just jammed them together and created it. But that's okay, because we can also do this. We can do plus like that. And now when we run it, we have added the space in there explicitly, and it will output the whole thing with the space. So plus works. Let me show you one other way that works, okay? The other way that works is this. Let's make sure I get it right here. There's append. You can do full name, which I have as a variable declared up there, dot append. First name. Sorry. So here we have first name, full name dot append first name. When we run this, what we will see is the full name is Clay. The string originally was empty, but it added the first name, and then we can do other stuff. We can build it sequentially through a series of operations, which isn't as nice, but it's possible. And each time we do this, then we will progressively add more to the string. So here's what I've done, just because I went through that pretty quickly. We input the first name and last name. We output your name as first name space last name. Now we say full name, which is set up here to be an empty string dot append first name, and we output it. We should just see the full name. Then we append a space, and we output it, so we should see the full name and a space. Are we going to be able to tell the difference between the full name and the full name and a space? No, because the space is sort of invisible to us. And then we append the last name, and then we output, we should see the whole thing. So using append, you can build things sequentially if you need to. So here we see the name is Clay. Here we see the name is Clay, and if we highlight it, we can actually see the space. So that is actually there, and then the whole thing is there. So that works too. And there's one other way that we can do this. Comment this one out too. And if you need to go back and look at the code, you can uncomment these and see what you like. The other thing you can do is my favorite. plus equals. We just learned about that, right? And somebody gonna yell at me and tell me I forgot the underscore between first and name? Nope. And this one will build up the name and steps just like we saw before. Okay? So append works, plus equals works, and plus works. All of these things work on strings. So you can build it up. Right. Everybody good with this? I'll just run this and prove that it works. And again, if we highlight, there's no space on this one, but we can see the space on that one. So. All right. Yes, sir.
Does append work with math or like with
Yes. No, it only works on strings, but you can append anything you want to the string, any other string. So. No, I mean if you put append 3 plus 4 in there, you would get 3 plus 4. You'd have to put quotes around it and treat it like a string. So you can't do something like that. So. Okay. All right. Great. Let me just make another string file because these keep getting messy and it's nice to have cleaner ones. And you all realize that all this code gets uploaded to Blackboard, right? Have you all seen it there? If I remember, I also put it on CS class where you can copy it over, but I haven't been always remembering that. Okay. So let me clean this up and we'll go back to our original program we had before. Okay, so now we're doing some input and output. I'm sorry, we're doing the same thing we had before. Output, inner first and last names, inner first name, inner last name, things like that. So something that we can do with numbers is we can compare and see if the numbers are equal or greater than or less than. Think we can do that with strings? How many of you think we can? How many of you think we can't? How many of you think, obviously, when I'm talking about it, that's going to be a topic, and so of course we can? Why are you even making me raise my hand? Okay. So here's what we can do. We can do something that is an integer, and we can compare two strings. The way we compare two strings is this. We take one string, like first name, and we do dot. Anybody want to guess what it is? Compare. Equals might also be a valid one. Compare, and then put the other string. So we are comparing the first name to the last name. And let's see what we get. We get some comparison result. So go compile this. We're on string 5 now. All right, comparison result is minus 16. Well, that's totally unexpected. Let's try some other things and see what happens. Minus 16. Let's try one more thing. This is not how I thought it would work. Minus 48. Okay. Now I see what's happening. They have changed the compiler again. So, why do you think we're getting these bizarre differences? Yep. So what is it actually comparing to figure out if things are greater than or less than? Yeah? Okay. Just, you remember you were asking ASCII values before? I think what it's doing is comparing the ASCII values. And we can test this. And the way we're going to test it is, we're going to run this a few times. So my first name is A and my last name is B. What is the difference between A and B going to be? Minus 1. How about if we did it this way? B and A backwards? positive 1. Okay? How about if we put some capitals in there, A and B? It's going to be like in the 30s or 40s, I suspect, like minus 30, right? And so what it's doing in these comparisons is it's not actually comparing the numbers, it is comparing the values of the characters. Okay? And it's looking at the first character and probably the first character only, and determining what the difference is in those ASCII values. So if we put CL and C, what's the letter? J, K, K. I wonder if that's going to do anything. It's 1, okay? And if we do CL and HIJKLMHIJ, it's 2, okay? So what it's doing is it is comparing these strings based on the first letter, and if they are different, it returns the ASCII value. If they are the same, it then looks at the second letter and figures it out. Okay? So the important thing to remember is that if the strings are the same, you will get a 0. If the string is in order alphabetically, the first one is alphabetically before the second one, you will get a -1, and if the other way around, 1. Now, everybody sort of see what's going on here? The best way that this thing has to compare strings is using those ASCII values, which I showed one time, right? You don't have to memorize those, but you have to know that capitals have different numbers than lowercase, and lowercase are all kind of in sequential order. So we can compare strings. It just ends up not comparing exactly the way you would want. Okay. Have you ever been on a computer and you asked it to sort files and it like put all the capital ones with all the lowercase together and all the lowercase ones together? You ever encountered that just in day-to-day life? What's happening is it's using a comparison function like this, and then it puts them together in numerical order of the ASCII code. All right, so we can do that, and those aren't. You think there's any other ways we can do this? I don't know is a perfectly good answer. Let's try this. I'm going to call it equal result, and we're going to do first equals first name equal last name. Because if we could do plus, it makes sense that we could do equals, right? Doesn't it? Put some parentheses around this just to make it clearer if my keyboard responds. Okay, so we'll see if equal results works. So we're doing two comparisons now, one using the .compare method and one using the equal signs. Okay. Yeah, equals equals doesn't seem to work, so I don't think we can use that. All right, everybody sort of happy? I know going through details like this isn't always the most fun, but yep. Oh, I don't know. Let's try it and see. Maybe I screwed that up. Clay. Oh yeah, check that out. It does work. What happens if we do different capitalization? Not. So they have to be the same. Good. Thank you. Equals equals does work. I need to eat something. My brain is like shutting down. So we have like 2 minutes left. I'll just ask for questions, and then if I don't fall over, I will. Oh yeah. Okay. So the question for the project is, how do you find the maximum and the minimum eligibility scores? All right, I have a list of numbers. Can you see those numbers? Let me put some spaces before them. All right, you see that list of numbers? What's the maximum number? What's the minimum number? How do you know? Because what? All right, so what process of looking at them that you did really fast in your head? Great. So, yes? So what you did is you looked at each one of the list, right? And you thought, well, I have a 1. Is 1 the biggest number I've seen so far? Yeah, like when you first look at that 1, is that the biggest number you've seen so far? So what's the maximum number when you've seen the 1? Okay, now look at 6. Is 6 bigger than 1? What's the maximum number you've seen so far? Now look at this 8. What's the maximum number you've seen so far? What's this 10? What's the maximum number you've seen so far? Look at the 0. What's the maximum number you've seen so far? Okay, so your algorithm for doing this is going to have to keep track of a couple of things, right? What you need is a min number that you've seen and a max. And as you go through each number you look at, you say, oh, I looked at the number 1. 1 is my min and 1 is my max. Now I'm looking at the number 6. Is 6 less than 1? So what's the min number I've seen? Is 6 greater than 1? So what's the max number I've seen? Now I see an 8. Is 8 less than 1? So min is still 1. And then is 8 greater than 6? That's your max. 10. Is 10 less than 1? Is 10 bigger than 8? 0. Is 0 less than 1? So your min becomes 0. Is 0 greater than 10? Yes. So it becomes no, it's not. So okay. That's your algorithm. Can you do that? Other questions? Yes, sir. Code. Yeah. Are you copying it? Why are you copying it? It's going to be online in like an hour. You can just download it. So, all right. Other questions? Yes. Uh-huh. Okay. So the question is, for my output for project 2, I do some set width, and that makes it look pretty, right? So if I do Lima subjects dot text, and I do like 34, we do this nice formatting, all right? So the question is, do you have to get the formatting exactly the same as mine? No. But your formatting should be nice, right? Like you can actually figure out how long my formatting is if you just cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? It's what? 40, right? So you already counted. So it's 40. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Make it pretty though, okay? Any last questions? We're over time now.